Ever walk down a street, maybe one you haven't seen in a while, and suddenly, bam! There's this
Yes.
brand new building, like totally changed the whole feel of the place, you know?
Right, right.
Well, today we're kind of doing that, but instead of a building, we're going behind the scenes of how one of those transformations happens.
Okay.
And stick with me because it's all happening right here in Baltimore, and honestly, it's way more interesting than you might think.
You're right. It's way too easy to just like focus on the shiny new thing, the final product.
Yeah.
But what most people don't see are all the legal hoops and financial gymnastics it takes to even get a project off the ground.
Exactly. And lucky for us, we've got the secret decoder ring, or at least a very important piece of it.
Oh, what's that?
It's this document you sent over the amended and restated operating agreement for something called, get ready for it, Eager Street Development 28 LLC.
Okay, I have to admit, that name doesn't exactly scream edge of your seat thriller.
I know, right?
Yeah,
Sounds like something you'd find buried in a filing cabinet, right?
totally.
But trust me, this is where things get juicy. This document, it's like a behind-the-scenes peek into how these deals really go down.
All right, you've piqued my curiosity. What's
Mhm.
the inside scoop? Break it down for us.
Okay, so first things first, let's decode this name a bit.
Okay.
Eager Street obviously tells us where this whole thing's going down, but Development 28 LLC. What's the deal with that?
So LLC, that stands for Limited Liability Company. And basically, it's a really popular way to structure these real estate deals,
Got
because it gives the people involved, the members, a certain degree of legal protection.
protection from what? Like, what could go wrong?
Well, I mean, think about it. Construction projects, they come with risks. Things can go wrong. Lawsuits happen.
Right,
So
right.
this LLC structure, it can help shield their personal assets if the project goes belly up, if they get sued or something.
Ah, so you're saying you don't want to lose your house over a construction snafu.
Exactly.
Makes sense. So who are these LLC members? Who are the players in this real estate game?
Okay, so we've got three main players here. First up, we've got the historic East Baltimore Community Action Coalition, or HEBCAC for short.
Okay, HEBCAC, got it.
They're a local nonprofit organization, and they're all about revitalizing the community.
So they're like the heart and soul of this project, the ones making sure the community actually benefits.
You got it. They bring that local knowledge, that connection to the neighborhood that's super valuable.
Okay, so who else is at the table?
Next, we've got AE Holdings, LLC AE for short.
Yay.
They're your classic for-profit developer, the ones with the hard hats and the spreadsheets. They're bringing the experience, the financial muscle to get this thing built.
Okay, makes sense. So we've got the community champions and we've got the seasoned developers. Who completes this real estate dream team?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. The third player is Healthy Planet, LLC. They're another development company. But here's the thing.
Hit me.
They came into this deal with a whopping 90% interest in the LLC.
Whoa, 90%? Did they win the lottery or something? That seems like a lot of control for one player.
Right. And that, my friend, is the million-dollar question. Because here's where it gets even more interesting. See, AE and HTP, they had already put in some serious cash, what we call capital contributions, to get the ball rolling.
Right.
But Healthy Planet, their initial contribution, get this, was a measly $1,000.
Wait, hold on, back up. $1,000 for a 90% stake in a real estate development deal. That doesn't add up.
Exactly. And that's why we're here. There's more to the story. Buried in the fine print, there's this little detail about a $48,000 loan, an outstanding loan from Healthy Planet to the LLC.
Yeah.
Plus, they've also provided a line of credit for $250,000.
Okay, so instead of putting up a ton of money up front, they're saying, hey, we'll loan you the money, but we want the control in return.
Bingo. That's leverage, baby.
It's like a high-stakes game of Monopoly, but with real buildings on the line. And Healthy Planet just casually strolled in, tossed in a few IOUs, and somehow ended up owning Boardwalk and Park Place.
That's one way to look at it. It's a common strategy smaller developers use to get a piece of the action on bigger projects, Lets them spread their money further. But it definitely comes with more risk if things go south.
High risk, high reward, right. But we're not just talking about flipping houses here. We're talking about community development, building something that benefits everyone.
Right.
So how does that piece fit into this whole equation?
And that's what makes this document so fascinating. It's not just about the money, about who gets what percentage of the profit. It also lays out in detail who's responsible for what when it comes to actually making this project a reality.
Okay, so less about the money for a second and more about the actual work.
Right.
Who's doing what in this real estate ballet?
So it's actually really interesting how they've divvied up the tasks here. HEBCAC, the community group, they're the ones on the ground,
Okay.
securing permits, talking to the neighbors, even managing the day-to-day construction.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
They're the ones who really understand the heartbeat of the neighborhood,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And then you've got Healthy Planet and HEBCAC. They're teaming up on the bigger picture stuff like feasibility studies, making sure the design works, and even picking the contractors.
Wow, so it's like this carefully choreographed dance between like community vision and development know-how.
Exactly.
But as anyone who's ever seen Dancing with the Stars knows, even the best dancers, they can trip up sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Does this agreement, does it say what happens if someone, stumbles?
Oh, yeah, they thought of that.
Like what if one of the members wants out or they just can't agree on something?
You're right. No partnership is immune to a little drama, right? That's why this agreement has some very specific clauses about like transfers, what happens if the LLC needs to dissolve, and yeah, how they'd handle disputes. Like, for instance, you can't just decide one day I'm out of here and sell your share to just anyone.
Well, there are rules. Of course there are rules.
Always rules. And the agreement says that transferring ownership requires everyone to agree and that consent can't be unreasonably withheld. It's about, making sure everyone's on the same page and protecting the partnership.
So there are checks and balances. It's good to have those ground rules, especially when you're talking about something as big as, a real estate development.
Absolutely. And if things go really sour, like beyond repair, the agreement even outlines how they would dissolve the LLC, including how they divvy up all the assets.
Wow, they really did think of everything.
Yeah.
But there's this one clause that really caught my eye, this AE purchase option. Okay, so what's the deal with that?
All right, buckle up.
Uh-huh.
This is where things get really wild.
Ooh, I love a good plot twist. Don't leave me hanging.
Okay, so this clause basically gives AE, the developer, the right to buy out the other members' interests in the LLC for just $1.
Wait, what? $1? Are we talking about like a cup of coffee here or a major development project? $1.
I know, right? Sounds crazy, but of course there's a catch.
Yeah.
This option only kicks in under very specific circumstances.
Okay, like what?
Like if the company defaults on its payments to AE, specifically those development fees we were talking about earlier, if those payments are late, I think it's more than 30 days late after AE sends a warning, then they can basically say, okay, that's it, we're taking over.
Wow. Talk about leverage. So those fees, they aren't just about AE getting paid for their expertise. They're like a power move, It's
Yeah.
like they're ensuring that they have a safety net if things go off the rails.
Precisely. It really highlights how crucial their role is in all of this. They're not just a hired hand.
Yeah.
They have a lot of say in how this whole project unfolds.
It's just like they have the magic wand and everyone else is just like hoping they use it wisely.
That's a great way to put it.
So AE has this like escape hatch built in. But let's be real, this whole thing kind of hinges on there even being a profit to split.
Right.
So how does that work? Is it a free-for-all or are there rules about who gets what and when?
So imagine like a waterfall, right? With different levels.
Okay.
That's kind of how this profit-sharing agreement is set up.
Okay, I'm picturing this waterfall of cash. I like it. So who's at the top catching all that sweet, sweet cash first?
You might think, okay, Healthy Planet, they've got that 90% stake, right?
Right.
But actually, it's AE, the developer, who gets first dibs, even before any loan repayments.
Whoa, really? So even with a smaller ownership percentage, they negotiated themselves a pretty sweet deal.
They did, didn't they? We're talking $7,750 every month for the first 2 years.
Okay.
Which, adds up to a cool $42,000. Plus, on top of that, they get 2 additional payments of $6,500.
So basically, they're getting a guaranteed chunk of change just for being AE, the real estate gurus.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it really shows how much their experience is valued in this whole equation.
Yeah.
They're taking on a lot of that upfront risk,
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they'd want to secure those fees up front.
Makes sense. Okay, so AE gets their cut. What about HEBCAC, the community group? When do they see some green?
So HEBCAC, they get a monthly fee too, $6,500 for their development services.
Okay.
And Healthy Planet, with their 90% interest, well, they've got themselves a monthly fee of $2,500.
Interesting. So everybody's getting paid for their part of the deal throughout the project, not just waiting for one big payday at the end.
You got it. It keeps that cash flowing. It keeps everyone motivated to keep things moving forward.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's also that potential big payout at the end once everything's said and done.
Right, right. So let's talk about that. Once all the fees are paid out, everyone's taken their cut, how do those final profits, those big bucks, how do they get divided up? Does Healthy Planet just walk away with the lion's share?
So once all those initial fees and expenses are taken care of, any remaining profit is distributed according to their ownership interests. So Healthy Planet ends up with 60%, HEBCAC gets 35%, and then AE gets the remaining 5%.
Huh. That's actually a more balanced split than I was expecting, given that Healthy Planet had that big initial stake.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? It goes to show that those initial ownership percentages, they don't always tell the whole story. This profit split tells me that both HEB work with the community and AE's development experience, they're being recognized as super valuable, even if they aren't fronting as much capital as Healthy Planet.
Yeah,
Right.
it makes sense. This whole thing is about more than just, like, throwing up a building, right? It's about building it the right way.
Exactly. It's about understanding the community development. It's a team effort.
Yeah.
Everyone has their role to play, and this agreement really reflects that.
Yeah, it does. But even the best teams, they have their disagreements sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just the nature of any project this complex, right?
It's kind of wild when you think about it, right? Like, we started with this one agreement, this roadmap for a single project in Baltimore, and suddenly we're like uncovering all these bigger truths about how this whole world works. At least it feels that way to me, like all these aha moments about community development, about the whole dance between like making money and making a difference.
Yeah, that's the beauty of these deep dives, right? This one document, it's like a tiny window into this huge story, something that's happening in cities and towns everywhere.
Totally. It gets you thinking about like all the other projects happening behind the scenes all over the place, each one with its own cast of characters and its own set of challenges, right?
Absolutely. And, while there's no one-size-fits-all answer, I think this document gives us a really good starting point for
Right.
understanding, like, how complex these things really are.
Yeah.
We see what motivates the different players, the community groups, the developers, the people with the money, and we see how they try to navigate all the potential pitfalls.
It's like we're getting to peek behind the curtain, and suddenly you realize the wizard is actually this whole team of people with blueprints and calculators, all trying to make something amazing happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes those blueprints, they lead to really amazing things, like they breathe new life into communities. But we also have to remember that development, it always comes with trade-offs.
Yeah,
Like what does revitalization actually mean for the people who already live there?
that's the big question, isn't it? And it's something we should all be asking, especially now with so many cities, looking at development as the answer to all these challenges.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. This document, it's given us a lot to think about.
Yeah.
The money, the power dynamics, how important it is to get the community involved.
Yeah.
But it also leaves us with some pretty big questions, especially about the long-term impact of projects like this.
Like, will this new development actually help the people who already live there, or will it just end up pushing them out?
Yeah,
Like who gets to decide what a neighborhood becomes?
right. And what happens when those decisions involve, these legal documents and financial structures that most people don't have the time or the knowledge to really understand?
It reminds you that knowledge really is power, right? The more we understand how these deals work, the better we can fight for our communities and make sure everyone's playing fair.
Couldn't agree more. And that's my big takeaway for everyone listening. Don't be afraid to ask those tough questions. Dig into those public records and find out what's happening where you live.
So well said. And for our listeners who are ready to do some digging of their own, we'll be sure to link to the Eager Street Development Agreement on our website.
Yeah, do that.
I'll warn you, it's not exactly a beach read, but it is a fascinating look into, like, the nuts and bolts of urban development.
Yeah, it really is. And remember, this is just one story. So take a look around your own community. See those cranes, the construction crews, that's your cue. Start asking questions. Find out what's happening, the forces at play that are shaping the places we call home.
Amazing. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of real estate development. It's been quite a ride, hasn't it?
It has.
For everyone listening, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and most importantly, keep learning. We'll catch you next time.